As Csaba mentioned, this project, the Enrich project, embarks on exploring climate rights of children from the perspective and practice of environmental NGOs throughout Europe. And in that regard, it is quite a unique project, as it approaches children's rights from an environmental and climate law angle. And basically, it aims to include child citizens in exercising rights and actions that environmental NGOs operate with. So my role here in this webinar is to give you some kind of an introduction to why children should be able to participate in climate change matters, and what are the main frameworks and instruments and avenues that empower them, as well as those actors who have the responsibility to recognize children as active citizens for climate change matters. Okay, so Europe is the fastest warming continent in the world, and the continent is not prepared for these immense impacts. It's according to the European Environmental Agency from its report last year. What it entails for children, many really serious and dangerous impacts, such as heat-related illnesses, with infants and young children being especially vulnerable, air pollution exacerbated by climate change, which leads to higher rates to asthma and respiratory diseases, climate-induced disasters such as flooding and wildfires, and storms disrupt schooling and can cause severe psychological distress for children. Climate change impacts also deepens inequalities in society and marginalized children, including those from low-income countries, low-income background, or migrant communities, disproportionately affected. So many reports from the IPCC, UNICEF, Save the Children, other child rights and environmental organizations, the European Environmental Agency, the WHO, all highlight these risks, stressing the need for child-focused climate policies. So climate rights, they encompass a broad range of protections and entitlements linked to environmental sustainability, and they ensure that individuals, particularly vulnerable groups like children, have the right to a healthy environment and protection from climate-related harm. At the same time, climate citizenship it moves beyond the rights and protection, and it involves responsibilities, it involves participation and agency. And children should be, and they also demand to be, recognized as agents of change and children actively contribute to climate solutions rather than merely being considered as some kind of future generations to be protected. So what does climate citizenship mean for children, and how is it applicable to children who are under the age of 18 years? So a vast body of research shows that children who are indeed active citizens, who engage in various sorts of citizenship activities such as public consultations, political deliberations, citizen assemblies, public speeches, protests, and school strikes. These are all activities that many children engage with in environmental issues and climate change issues. And research shows that children's civic engagement is beneficial not only to children themselves, but also to the society as a whole, because these active young citizens are likely to develop a long-term or a lifelong commitment to democratic values and to stand up for a just and fair society in their lifetime. So climate citizenship shows a specificity in a sense that it's not typically linked to the national context. It's not to be understood under what we usually apply to citizenship under the national sovereignty. It can be connected through across borders and even globally through various fora such as physical spaces, international governance spaces such as the COP meetings, for example, and also through social media tools, digital spaces. The concept of children's climate citizenship entails rights-based implications. This means that children do have the right to practice certain citizenship rights, which have citizenship activities which typically apply to adults, such as participating in policymaking and decision-making at all levels of governance, such as the right to the freedom of expression, the freedom of peaceful assembly and association, and so on. So in addition, at the United Nations governance level, the children are recognized as key stakeholders in climate change and sustainable development issues, and they are provided institutionalized spaces to participate in decision-making. But despite all these entitlements, children lack the means and full citizenship status to exert direct influence on political leadership or to hold decision makers to account. So children tend to employ versatile and inventive means and avenues in order to exhaust all sorts of possibilities to be heard and to exert influence. There's also a risk that their actions, they become disappointed in adults' decisions on climate issues. Of course, we all see that governments fall short in acting on climate change. And children may be very disappointed, and their actions might evolve into more radicalized and disruptive actions. And they are at risk also to being victimized or criminalized. Therefore, legal guarantees and societal support is crucial to safeguard children's rights in the climate change matters. Climate change, children's rights related to climate change matters are enshrined in the European context in many legal instruments. Also, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, which is the primary legal instrument that has been ratified by all the EU member states and all European countries, encompass children's rights to participate in climate change matters. General comments to this instrument also detail and provide interpretation to what participation means. Also within the general comment 26 also discusses children's rights in the environmental and climate change context, and of course entails provisions on participation, access to justice. And there is also a new general comment in the pipeline, general comment number 27, which will discuss the interpretation of access to justice for children. So there are also other instruments such as the European Convention on Human Rights, which is often involved in climate change litigation at the European level. the Paris Agreement, the Aarhus Convention, the SDGs. SDG 16 entails the provision on access to justice for all, the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, where Article 24 also provides the participation for children in matters that affect them. And there are soft law and implementation guidelines on how to navigate the child participation measures through activities by the duty bearers. So to be effective, regional climate frameworks must be integrated into national laws and policies, and one key mechanism is transposition, where EU directives are implemented into domestic legislation, and national action plans further tailor these commitments, ensuring climate policies are child inclusive. And national human rights institutions, such as ombudspersons, play a monitoring role, advocating for compliance with climate and child rights obligations. And additionally, climate litigation and judicial interpretation is crucial, both at domestic level and at the European level. It helps to enforce and empower children in experiencing and practicing their climate rights. So to advance climate rights for children in Europe, we must implement and strengthen these legal frameworks, ensuring meaningful participation and enhanced access to justice for children. And of course, these rights can only be fulfilled if children are informed and have access to information not only on environmental issues as such or climate change issues as such, but also on their rights related to these matters and how they are equipped with different tools and spaces to be able to practice these rights. So governments, EU institutions, corporations, and civil society actors all have the role to play in making climate policies child inclusive, including providing child-friendly spaces and information. And as said in the beginning of this presentation, the inclusion of children in decision-making, legal advocacy, and climate action is not only beneficial to children, but it's also beneficial to us as adults, as the civil society participants, actors, and society as a whole, because children then will be committed to these democratic values and a sustainable and just society. So the Enrich project, as Csaba mentioned, has embarked on enhancing these rights, and Csaba will provide more insights in the end of this webinar to what has been done already in the Enrich project. Thank you very much for listening, and if you have any comments or questions, please get through the chat box and we can discuss it after the presentations. Thank you so much.
And especially thank you for keeping the time. This is really a challenge today.